Hey everybody!
This wasn't how I intended my first year of university.
Well, looks like I'm reviewing every film of the Disney animated canon.
But what does any of that have to do with Mr. Toad's Wild Ride?
It's gonna be interesting to see how Disney will follow these up after Walt died. So stay tuned for the future. Now speaking of the animation studio, where am I now after reviewing every film of the animated canon? Son of a gun. I have to review Oliver and Company now, don't I?
During the golden age of American animation, Walt Disney dominated the industry thanks to both his films and shorts, even pioneering with some animation techniques you still see today. But on December 15th, 1966, during the Jungle Book's development, Walt Disney sadly passed away and never got to see either the Jungle Book in its finished state, nor his passion project Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, that opened its gates 5 years later. You know how the tragic plane crash that results in the deaths of Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper is famously coined as the day the music died? In some ways, Walt's passing was like the day the magic of animation died, as during the late 60s and 70s, animation went through a bit of a slump. With a small handful of exceptions, not a lot came out from this time, especially for those released in cinemas. This was now the era of Saturday morning cartoons and Hanna-Barbera. Whilst Disney did put out films around then, they wouldn't be as well received as they once were, even when animation had a slight resurgence in the 80s, with former Disney animator Don Bluth making films of his own. And if that didn't tickle your animation interests, I hope you like Ralph Bakshi.
So today, we're gonna be looking at this new era for Disney and see if it really is the Dark Ages everyone claims it to be. And let me tell you, it's gonna be really impressive if they somehow make something worse than this.
Kicking off this new era without Walt, the Aristocats. We start with a nice colorful credit sequence and meet a wealthy madam and her pet cat, Duchess and Kittens. The madam's friend George pops by to begin writing her will. Her butler Edgar overhears what's going on in the other room, but finds out that all of her inheritance will be passed down to the cats instead of him, and becomes the film's antagonist for having a justifiable reaction.
Who passes down their inheritance and possessions to their pets?
We spend a bit of time with Duchess and her kittens painting and playing the piano, alongside a mouse named Roquefort living in the walls, before Edgar gives them cream that puts them to sleep. He takes them far away from the madam, bumping into a couple of dogs getting in his way in a fun sequence, leaving the cats stranded, and Madam soon realizing that her cats are gone. Now, where have I heard that before? The next morning, they meet the laid out and ever so charming Thomas O'Marley, voiced by Phil Harris, who voiced Baloo in the Jungle Book, and happens to be one of my favorite voice actors growing up. Really glad he's just as great now. He then takes Duchess and the kittens on a cross-country trek back home via hitchhiking, train tracks, and swimming when Marie falls down at one point, with Thomas saving her, soon meeting a couple of British lady geese who take the cats to Paris to meet their drunk Uncle Goose. I thought this was a kids movie. We cut back to Edgar heading back out to pick up his bowler hat, umbrella, and cat basket guarded by the random dogs from earlier, with Roquefort trying but failing to tag along. Edgar sneakily gets back his stuff in a fun sequence, even if it does highlight the film's biggest flaw, that being its weak plot. It feels like we're spending just as much time with these dogs as we do with the main cats the movie's pun is named after. We cut back to them walking above the city and bumping into a club with other jazz cats Thomas is familiar with. He brings Duchess and the kittens to party, cutting to the classic song, Everybody Wants to Be a Cat. Simpler times. A huge highlight for this film with a great song again and fun colorful sequence. I have absolutely nothing to say here. Afterwards, Thomas and Duchess look up at the starry night in an eerily familiar scene as they discuss what happens when they get home, with the two deciding to go their separate ways.
Thomas gets taken into the family at the end, doesn't he?
The next day, they make it back home, only to be caught by Edgar yet again and trapped in a chest to be sent all the way to Africa. Cause I guess it takes a lot to drag them away from him, with Roquefort heading out and told by Thomas to tell his cat friends to help out. Gotta say, he's a lot more interesting and useful to the plot than the mice in Cinderella ever were. After a brief bit of mishap, the cats make it out of the chest with help from Roquefort, with Edgar now trapped and taken to Africa. Thomas becomes a member of the Madam's cat family.
Called it.
Edgar's crossed off the will, and the cats gets a place to hang out in a dance party ending, causing irreversible damage to the animation industry ever since, wrapping up the movie. Now I quite enjoyed this one. The songs are quite good, the characters are likable, the kittens are cute, and it had some fun moments. And despite the film lazily rehashing elements from prior ones, the story making the Mario movie look like lost, overly long filler scenes, and whatever the heck that was, the Aristocats was a pretty solid experience, albeit a really basic one. Next up, Robin Hood. Now before we go into this one, it's safe to say that it's common knowledge that The Jungle Book was the last film Walt worked on before his death, but The Aristocats was the last film he approved, so it's uncharted seas from here. We begin the film with the prologue explaining that King Richard departed from England for a crusade, with Prince John ruling the land in his place. Long credit sequence with a song that oddly sounds like the hamster dance song later, we cut to Robin Hood and Little John walking through the forest, encountering the wuss that is Prince John and snake subjects heading to Nottingham. They disguise themselves as fortune tellers and steal his gold, rings, and even gold-plated wheels. While it may seem like Robin Hood and John are cold-hearted villains, we soon learn that Robin gives those riches to the poor, especially with the high taxes and greedy but admittedly entertaining Sheriff of Nottingham. A rabbit family is celebrating their son's birthday, and Robin comes by to give him a bow and arrow as a surprise. We cut to him and his friends playing around and shooting an arrow into the castle garden grounds, where they meet the fair Madame Marian and her chicken servant, where it's revealed that Marian, after years of being apart, still has a massive crush on Robin. We cut back to John and Robin, and would you know, he still has a massive crush on Marian after years of being apart. Meanwhile, Prince John holds an archery tournament to catch Robin, and so he disguises himself as a stork to enter, and still manages to woo Marian and have a disguised Little John sit next to Prince John.
Confused? Good!
Well, Solid Snake tries to find Robin, but to no success. Meanwhile, he excels at the tournament, but gets his cover blown. An incredibly fun sequence then follows with the characters facing off against each other with action, slapstick, everything you could ask for here and acquainted for. We then cut to a nice sequence of Robin and Marian on their own at night. It's not too long, and allows the film to breathe after the last scene, before we get to a dance party with everyone singing the phony old King of England, making fun of Prince John.
Now I could have sworn I've seen this before.
Yeah, Disney recycled animation in their films to help save money. While films like The Sword and the Stone and The Jungle Book did this before, this film is the most notorious example, reusing animation from The Jungle Book, The Aristocats, and hell, Snow White too. No movie is safe, not even Robin Hood itself, and it doesn't help that Little John is voiced by Phil Harris, who again voiced Baloo. It doesn't take you out to the illusion necessarily, but it is noticeable. The next day, Prince John catches the town, and even his subjects singing the phony old King of England. Feeling ridiculed, he raises the taxes, effectively making the poor poorer, and now in jail for calling him a wussy little wimp. Run. Really like how they make him go from being hilariously pathetic to having him really not screw around when he gets payback, making his character and status as a villain that more interesting, as we'll see 2 decades later. We also learned that the friar is also arrested and about to be executed, and despite all of that on top of having Nottingham's economy, Prince John is still like, "Oh no, I want to capture Robin Hood, where's my Blackie?" You can never please this guy, can you?
At this point, I'm praying he never becomes a Smash Brothers fan.
Thus, Robin and John, after hearing the news of the friar's execution, sneak into the castle to bust out the villagers and take back the money from a sleeping Prince John. He then wakes up catching Robin red-handed, as Little John leads the villagers to freedom, whereas Robin catches up whilst the castle is set on fire, leaping into the moat and is seemingly shot. But turns out he's fine. And so, King Richard returns from the X dimension pardoning Robin Hood, with Prince John and his subjects in jail, as Robin and Marian finally get married and live happily ever after. Ooh, lolly, this was good. Great characters, neat tunes, incredibly energetic sequences, and an unnerving sense of charm that everyone will enjoy.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, the animation made the budget of a used Kleenex and the plot could have been tweaked to be more interesting. But it's fun! and yet you'd rather watch Melody Time? In fact, I might go as far as to say this is the best take on the legend. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Era Flynn Classic might have something to say about it, but... well... but for now, this movie's great, and you're all wrong. Now let me ask you a question. Are you feeling a bit down in the dumps? Tired of all the hiccups of life? Well, tough, because you're going down to 100 Acre Wood to witness the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh!
No!
Now this film is pretty interesting, as it's a package film, and unlike Fantasia and the wartime films, this one houses 3 previously released featurettes, with Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree from 1966, Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day from 1968, and Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2 from 1974. And I think that's the most complicated thing I'm gonna say about this movie. We begin with a pan of a real-life bedroom before going into a book next to a teddy bear, introducing us to the main characters, Winnie, Eeyore, Kangaroo, Rabbit, Owl, and Christopher Robin. We start with the honey tree short, and after a brief scene of Winnie exercising, he realizes that he's all out of honey, and so he tries going up a tree with honey inside, but can barely reach it, and then gets Christopher Robin to help out with a balloon, but the bees calmly tell him to back off by surrounding the two and scaring them away. Oh bother, not the bees! Still wanting some sweet honey, he pops over to Rabbit's house and pretty much guzzles down his honey supply, and once he leaves, he gets stuck in Rabbit's hole. Everyone in Gopher tries to get him out, whilst Rabbit redecorates the place, putting an assortment of stuff on Winnie's butt. They wait for days and weeks until Winnie the Dump budges slightly, and everyone in 100 Acre Wood helps him get out as he's launched to the stratosphere, landing in a tree with all the honey he could possibly ask for. We then get taken to the next short with the Blustery Day. As the title implies, it's a blustery day in 100 Acre Wood with strong winds, with Piglet trying to tidy up his garden before bumping into Winnie and both getting blown into Owl's house, which gets tipped over and destroyed because of the wind. Everyone comes by to comfort them as Eeyore heads out to find Owl a new home. Winnie settles up for the blustery night while storming himself with a gun protecting his honey.
Disney used to be so different back then.
Tigger pops by for a bit of fun, as well as warning Winnie about heffalumps and weasels that are after his honey. We cut to Winnie having a nightmare about the heffalumps and weasels Tigger mentioned in a creative, if a little long, dream sequence. A neat successor to the pink elephants from Dumbo though. Winnie wakes up to see rain all over his house and across 100 Acre Wood. Piglet makes it out of his sinking house, only to be in the flood, whilst Winnie's morbid honey obsession also gets him in the water. Piglet sends a message to help for his friends, with Owl coming over to save him and Winnie. After blathering, they reach a waterfall, but make it out okay. Everyone holds a hero party to Winnie for saving Piglet, and Piglet then selflessly gives his house to Owl and moves in with Winnie, as everyone now holds a hero party for both of them. We get to the Tigger 2 segment, beginning with Winnie in this thinking spot, before Tigger comes by bouncing on him and later Piglet, and then irritating Rabbit, ruining his harvest because of his obnoxious bouncing. Rabbit holds a protest meeting with Winnie and Piglet, brainstorming how to get rid of Tigger, and so they head off to some foggy woods to ditch Tigger in just as they get lost themselves. Winnie and Piglet soon make it out, with Tigger also out too, going in again to find Rabbit. We cut back to Rabbit lost and frightened in the woods, with Tigger coming in to find him and get him out. Snow then comes to 100 Acre Wood, with Tigger picking up Roo for some bouncing. They play on the ice for a while, and then bounce up some trees, but little does Tigger know that he's afraid of heights and is stuck up on top of a tree. Roo calls out for help, with everyone coming to help him down. Tigger is too frightened to come down, even with Christopher Robin's coat to help him down, and promises Rabbit that he'll never bounce again once he's on the ground. The book and narrator then allow Tigger to slide down on the words back on the ground. Really wish more fourth wall breaks would do these. But because of what Tigger promised to Rabbit, he never bounces again, leaving him sad. But it turns out that everyone loves him the way he is, even Rabbit, and thus, everyone learns how to bounce. But sadly, it all must come to an end, as Christopher Robin must leave 100 Acre Wood to go to school and grow up. And we spend some last bits of time with him and Winnie, who tells Christopher that he'll always be welcome to 100 Acre Wood. But the film finally ends with a real-life teddy bear winking at the audience.
Five Nights fans are gonna have a field trip with this.
It's bittersweet, but fits Winnie the Pooh pretty well, and how else were they gonna end this package film with 3 previously released featurettes? And you know what, screw it, I'm also gonna throw in a date for Eeyore, which released 6 years later with a re-release of The Sword of the Stone, which you can find on the DVD release of Many Adventures. We start with the typical bedroom pan and character roll call just before Pooh walks in the woods and invents a new game called Pooh Sticks, where you drop some tree branches from a bridge and see which branch makes the other side first. Winnie gets Piglet to join in, and then find Eeyore floating along, revealing that Tigger bounced on him, sending him to the water, leaving Eeyore that more depressed. Winnie and Piglet then learn that today is Eeyore's birthday, which leads them to find presents. Winnie gets a jar of honey, which he then eats, leaving an empty jar, and pops over to Owl's house, who writes a birthday message onto it, and Piglet gets a red balloon, which bursts. The two then head to Eeyore to get the presents, which manages to make Eeyore smile despite the imperfections. This feels wrong for some reason. Everyone in 100 Acre Woods holds a party for him and all play Pooh Sticks, with Eeyore winning the most rounds and Tigger winning none. Definitely not as good as the main feature, with the lower production values being animated by a different studio, but still a nice featurette nonetheless.
I can't diss this movie!
Now, this is an incredibly endearing and charming film. The art style is lovely, the characters are excellent and icons for a reason, some of the most creative fourth wall breaks I've ever seen, and 3 nice, simple, and effective stories in one damn cozy film. Granted, it was more geared towards really young audiences with the basic stories and general vibe to it, yet in Winnie the Pooh's case, I think that's all it ever really needed to be. And even as a 22-year-old, it still managed to make me grin. So the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is still a charming classic. Just make sure it's not that Winnie the Pooh.
This is the best film so far. That's kinda depressing.
And you know what else is depressing? The Rescuers wasn't too bad either. We start with a young girl in the bayou sending a message in a bottle, showcasing its journey through stills during the credits. Some mice receive it and take it to the Rescue Aid Society, hidden in the United Nations of all places. Definitely took a good minute for me to get used to their designs. I guess they wanted to replicate Beatrix Potter's art style to differentiate from their prior films, but I think a film later on will show us how well that turned out. They receive it and learn that a young girl named Penny is trapped by her evil adopter and sends out Bianca to rescue her, who takes Bernard, the janitor of all mice, cause why not? They head out across New York in a zoo briefly before heading to an orphanage where they talk to a cat to find out where Penny is. We have a flashback of him and Penny giving a backstory of her wanting to run away after not being adopted, but talk things out, whilst Bernard and Bianca are told to check out Medusa's pawn shop.
The cat is the best character, and yet he isn't even in this movie for 10 minutes.
They investigate it, and we meet the film's villain Medusa, who has a lot of energy, is fluently animated, and pretty fun. But she is definitely no Cruella de Vil. The rescuers try to follow her in their car to Devil's Bayou, but don't hold on for very long, and so they take Orville the Albatross to go there. And you also see Bernard and Bianca getting close together. They make it, but get shot down by local critter residents and make it out okay. Meanwhile, Penny tries to run away, with Medusa finding her and Penny getting caught by the crocodiles. The mice then meet up with the locals, and a dragonfly taxis them to Medusa's hideout. We cut to Penny with Medusa and her husband, who, despite having vast riches, Medusa is desperate to find a particular diamond.
Oh great, another Smash fan.
Using Penny to get it, with the movie jangling to us the struggles Penny goes through with her evil parents, pet crocodiles which are pretty cool, and the fact that her only friend is a teddy bear.
Her life sucks, we get it!
Bernard and Bianca inspect the place whilst getting into some hijinks with the crocodiles and Medusa. Penny once again looks out, hoping to get out of here, showcasing bio-related animals in nature, and even Bambi and his mother. Why is this starting to become a running theme? Bernard and Bianca finally meet Penny and talk out how she can escape. The next day, Medusa and her husband take Penny to fetch the fabled diamond, with Bernard and Bianca tagging along. The three then get the diamond out of the skull with minimal jeopardy, and soon back at the hideout, the local rodents go out to face off against Medusa, her husband, and crocodiles, letting Penny, Bernard, and Bianca finally escape. The news revealed that Penny is now adopted to new parents and that she donated the diamond to proper authorities as Bernard and Bianca get closer together, continuing their job as the rescuers. This was another pretty solid one. While nowhere near the return to form for Disney critics in 1977 said it was, it still had its fair share of Jews. The atmosphere and vibes to the set pieces are great, With Juicer and her pet crocodiles make for entertaining enough villains, there are some fun moments, and the film gets bonus points for the crocodiles playing the organ. Though the film may have been too obsessed with creating sympathy for the audience for its own good, and Bernard and Bianca's relationship feeling kinda rushed, The Rescuers was pretty good. I just really hope it doesn't catch an unnecessary sequel 13 years later. And now for The Fox and the Hound. The last time we see credits at the start of these movies. A good start with a quiet pan of the woods, and as the noise gets louder, we suddenly see a mother fox carrying her child rushing through the woods as the music gets more intense and credits continue. Great contrast and way of settling the audience in the film's world. The mother leaves her child in a barn and heads back out, only to be shot in one of the fastest parental figure deaths in a Disney movie 5 minutes in.
Huh, new record.
Big Mama the Owl, Boomer the Woodpecker, and Dinky the Finch then find a lost fox and nick some laundry above him to attract Widow Tweed in the house, where she then encounters the fox, who she takes in to raise and calls him Todd. We also see Boomer and Dinky trying to get a caterpillar throughout the film Tom and Jerry style. Meanwhile, a hunter named Amos, who lives next door, takes home a puppy named Copper to raise as a hunting dog, alongside his other grown dog Chief, who will mainly look after Copper. One day when exploring, Todd and Copper soon meet, instantly becoming friends. Big Mama sings a typical song about friendship, and Amos finds Copper and go their separate ways. The next day, Copper is tied up to a barrel, and Todd comes by to play, but gets into trouble with Chief, the chicken coop, and even Amos. Tweed comes to save Todd, and he and Copper are once again split up, and will be even more distant as Amos takes Copper and Chief on a hunting trip during the winter. Todd misses his chance to say goodbye, and the birds warn him about Copper becoming a hunting dog, given the two being natural enemies.
Next you'll be telling him that Santa doesn't exist.
Kinda wish we spent more time with the two together to get a better sense of their friendship, and create more impact to the second half of the film. Boomer and Dinky then migrate for the winter, and during the trip with Amos, Copper grows to become a skilled hunting dog, giving a good haul of animal skin. Spring arrives with Boomer and Dinky returning, and we see Todd grown up, excited to see Copper again. Copper, Chief, and Amos return from their trip as Todd comes over to say hi, but Copper tells him the unfortunate truth, with Todd getting chased by the trio, and as Copper lets Todd escape just once, Chief then gets hit by a train and falls a good height, breaking his ankle, leading Copper to swear revenge against Todd. I refuse to believe that Hairball survived that. It's not like he does anything else significant in the rest of the film, other than being whiny and pathetic, so he might as well be dead. And besides, it would further give Copper motivation and justification for his revenge. Todd makes it home, but Amos pops by, warning that sooner rather than later, Todd will meet his comeuppance. The next day, Tweed takes Todd for a ride, and little does he know it'll be his last, as she lets Todd go free in the woods to keep him away from Amos. Okay, this scene made me tear up inside. Todd feels lost and alone in this new territory, and with help from Big Mama, soon meets a lady fox named Vixie. After some rough first impressions, Todd and Vixie end up together. Meanwhile, Amos and Copper set up traps to get Todd. Todd and Vixie go through the woods, only to encounter Amos and Copper hunting them down. The two foxes try to escape, and alongside the hunters, encounter a vicious bear, leading to the film's climax of Todd facing off against the bear and defeating it. Just as Amos is about to finally take care of Todd once and for all, Copper stands in front of him, making his owner lower his gun and sparing the fox, which makes Todd and Copper go their separate ways, the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, Tweed taking care of Amos, and closing out with Todd and Vixie looking down the woods at his former home. It turns out that a fox and a hound can't be friends. Makes sense because foxes don't live as long. Another good one thanks to its charm in the first half, strong emotional whiplash in the second, great characters, gorgeous art direction, and effective storytelling. Does that mean the movie's great? God no! The story is far from perfect, as I personally would have made a few changes to make the emotional impact more effective, and besides, did we really need that side plot of Boomer and Dinky trying to catch that caterpillar? But again, is another good addition from this era. The Black Cauldron is up next, an adaptation of the first two books of the Chronicles of Prydain series, and is the first time we see the classic Disney Castle logo, not counting an unfinished version seen in Return to Oz. We start with the backstory of a magic cauldron determining the fate of the world in typical fantasy film fashion, and cut to a barn with a boy named Taran, who looks after a pig that can see the future.
I was doing it a favor.
Taran dreams of one day becoming a great hero, and opportunity strikes as after the pig sees a dark vision of an evil king enslaving the world, Taran's master sends him out to keep the pig away from evil's clutches. The pig runs off deep into the woods, all thanks to Taran fantasizing himself becoming a hero, as I fantasize myself punching him in the face. He tries to find the pig and bumps into Gurgi, a mythical creature wanting to play with Taran, distracting him from finding the pig. Not a good first impression of the character, and is admittedly pretty annoying. The pig then gets captured and taken into an evil castle. Taran sneaks in, and we get acquainted with the main villain, the Horned King, and his minions within the castle. Taran gets the pig, but is caught and held prisoner in the dungeon. He then meets a girl named Princess Eloise, and she helps him out of the dungeon, and Taran finds a sword to further help them bust out. Taran and the girl, alongside a random bard tagging along, make it out with the pig going a different way. Outside, they all talk things out and get to know each other, or more so play the blame game, as at one point, Eloise points out to Taran that they only made it out because of the plot convenience that was his sword doing all the heavy lifting. But Taran defends himself and only thinks she said that because, get this, she's a girl! I kinda have to agree with her on that one, and is further proof why I end up less manly than this puffball. Gurgi comes back.
Damn it!
And he falls into a whirlpool with everyone falling in and ending up in the pixie village of Discount Smurfs. They reunite with the pig, and the pixies help the group take a shortcut and keep the pig from the Horned King's grasp, telling me that the writers forgot about this crucial element in the film's plot 2/3 through the thing, and Taran and crew all then make it to a witch's coven.
So let me get this straight. Cramming 2 books worth of story into an 82-minute movie isn't a good idea?
And want you to know, it isn't. On top of the film already having a "and then this happened" form of storytelling, the film zips through all of these crucial elements and focuses on less important, overly long scenes of the characters just talking, when it should be the other way around, making the story and world building feel incredibly rushed. Not even the Mario movie was that bad. Back to the film as in the coven, the group meet 3 witches, and after some hijinks with them, they reveal to have the Black Cauldron, and Taran gives up his movie-carrying sword in order to get it. They do so, but all except Gurgi get caught by the Horned King's minions. With the cauldron now his, the Horned King finally unleashes his plans to conjure up his army of the dead. Which brings us as to why this film became so infamous. This was the first film of the Disney animated canon to be rated PG by the MPA. While nothing more but a warning that the feature contains fart jokes nowadays, this was back when movies really didn't horse around. A year before the Black Cauldron's release, films such as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins raised concerns for having the rating whilst containing not so PG friendly elements, leading to the PG-13 rating becoming established the next year. With the fact that an animated Disney movie got a PG, and almost an R judging from lost deleted scenes, did throw people off back then. Whilst over here in the land of Tesco's and overabundance of pups, it's fun for the whole family! Because of that and mixed reviews, the film was a massive box office bomb for Disney and nearly killed the company as a result, with Disney barely acknowledging its existence ever since. It took 12 years for it to be on VHS, it doesn't have a Blu-ray release here in the UK, and it wasn't featured in the credits for Wish. Well, neither were the Rescuers, and yet you don't see me complaining. With how hell-bent the company is at making us forget about this film, it's lucky to be on Disney+. Make my music doesn't have such privilege. But back to the film as Taran, the princess, and Bard are all tied up about to witness the beginning of the new Dark Age. However, Gurgi comes in to help untie Taran as he plans to jump into the cauldron, sacrificing himself. But Gurgi does it for him instead for absolutely screw-all reasons.
Yes!
With Gurgi in the cauldron, the army dissolve after barely being a meter away from the castle, with the Horned King investigating the place to resurrect his army, only to be sucked into the cauldron after getting slightly nudged by Taran. This is the worst evil villain I've ever seen. No! Not into the pit! It burns! Now that the Horned King is defeated, the castle crumbles down with Taran, the princess, and Bard all narrowly escaping. Rewarded for bringing peace to the land, the witches from earlier via fog give Terran back his sword and bring Gurgi back to life.
Disney, of all the characters you could have chose to resurrect, why did you go with that hairy sack?
And thus, they all live happily ever after, and we also see the pigs safe at home with Terrence Master at the start. I'm pretty mixed with this one. On one hand, the animation and scenery in this film look fantastic, and the darker tones are a great direction for Disney. But the film doesn't really commit to those darker elements to justify its PG rating it became so notorious over. In some ways it ended up being less dark than something like Bambi, which I doubt everybody working on this film were intending. The Rust story again, and possibly the worst character ensemble in a Disney movie up to that point. Tara makes me look like Jason Momoa, the princess's character is thinner than the second dimension, the Bards is a waste of time, space, and the animation budget, Gurgi is the Jar Jar Binks of Disney characters, the future-seeing pig speaks for itself, and the Horned King, despite having an incredibly cool design, ended up being less intimidating than this. In fact, I might go as far as to say I'd rather watch the Zelda CGI cutscenes over this. They may be objectively worse, but holy cow are they far more entertaining. You know what this film could benefit from? A TV show, where it can stretch the story to last multiple seasons, expand the world and lore, as well as adding some additional themes and character development to make it more memorable for the viewer.
Oh, never mind, we already got that covered.
So with that, I can see as to why Disney are so embarrassed at this film, and I am really sorry to any Black Cauldron fans watching, but this one didn't do it for me. But I've got good news for the Great Mouse Detective. We start in London 1897 with the girl mouse Olivia and her father Flaversham in the toy shop. A peg-legged bat then comes in to steal Flaversham. Olivia goes out to find the legendary detective Basil of Baker Street, where she meets Dr. Dawson in the rain, and both go to Basil's place underneath Sherlock Holmes' house. They finally meet Basil and inquire him about Olivia's missing father, whilst he obsesses over outsmarting his mortal enemy, Ratigan, voiced by Vincent Price. Hurry cut to his lair, revealing his plans to sabotage the Queen Mouse's Diamond Jubilee to take over as king, with help from Flaversham and sending the bat out to a toy shop to get some stuff for his plan. There's also a pretty fun musical number about Ratigan, which also showcases his darker side by feeding one of his henchmen to a cat for calling him a rat, even though it's literally in his name.
How dare you refer to I as the DK Mountain enthusiast Bartolo Dezzetti? You make me sick!
We return to Basil as they set out to find clues, taking a ride with Sherlock's pet dog Toby. Definitely a pretty good boy. They all head to a toy shop and find the bat stealing from a list for Ratigan, and also kidnaps Olivia. Basil and Dawson find the list, and after some elaborate research at home, find out that the paper came from a shady neck of town near the River Thames. Ratigan briefly reunites Flaversham with Olivia before imprisoning her in a bottle to give Flaversham more reason to do Ratigan's bidding. Basil and Dawson then head to a bar whilst wearing disguises. Basil asks a waitress about the whereabouts of Ratigan, leading them to receive drugged drinks. As they encounter the peg-legged bat, and Dawson goes up on stage with some mice singers, before starting a bar fight, letting Basil and Dawson escape in the sewers to find Ratigan's lair following the peg-legged bat. But it turns out that Ratigan was expecting them to come, outsmarting Basil, leaving him devastated. Ratigan then plans an elaborate execution for the detective and doctor, once a song taunting the men as he heads out to sabotage the Queen Mouse's Jubilee. At Buckingham Palace, they capture her and reveal that Flaversham was used to build a robot replica of her, taking over. Basil is down in the dumps with Ratigan outsmarting him, ready for his doom. But after talking things out with Dawson, comes up with a plan to escape their demise, also freeing Olivia, and head off to stop Ratigan with Toby taking them. At Buckingham Palace, the Queen Robot is used to announce Ratigan as a royal consort and also reveals some new laws effectively making the whole country give him their money. Whereas the bat sends the real Queen to be eaten by the cat, Bob, Basil, and co. come in to save her with Toby chasing the cat, making her climb into the Royal Guard dog's pen. They all make it in time to call out Ratigan, foiling his plan. Olivia gets kidnapped again by the bats and Ratigan, and Basil, Dawson, and Flaversham chasing down in the sky. Basil, Olivia, and Ratigan then crash into Big Ben, and we see some CGI gears that still look quite impressive today. Olivia bites Ratigan and Basil jams his cape into the gears, giving them a chance to escape. Just as they make it out, Ratigan soon follows them, becoming the rat he truly is, with Basil facing him off on the clock handles, with Ratigan falling off to his death, taking Basil with him. But Basil makes it out okay. The Queen honors the detective with a medal, and back at home, Olivia and Fathersham bid farewell to Basil and Dawson. Just as Dawson prepares to leave, a client pops by for Basil, and thus, he takes in Dr. Dawson and would both go on to crack many cases ever since, with Dawson looking back at this one the fondest. Now, this was pretty great. The world building was top notch, the characters are really fun and likable, the action sequences are exciting, the pacing is nice and tight, the animation is great, especially the CGI gears, the voice acting is just as great, it has a juggling octopus. Why does nobody talk about this movie? Not only is this film criminally underrated, but I think it was here where we really started to see elements and gave birth to the modern Disney we know and love today. I would kill to see these guys crack another case. But I guess we'll have to settle for this hairball instead. Oliver and Company, a modern take on Oliver Twist in 1988. The film starts in New York, and in the street, kittens are being offered in a box for people to pick up. Take a guess who the main protagonist is. After a combination of nobody picking him up at a storm, Oliver gets lost in the city and encounters a stray dog named Dodger teaching him about how he makes it in the city with the song Why Should I Worry? Pretty good song, all things considered. Oliver then follows Dodger across the city to his home under the pier, meeting up with Dodger's other friends and his owner Fagin, who reveals that he needs to pay off Sykes the loan shark, or else he faces a tough punishment, to put it lightly. The next day, they all go off in the city to pawn out their stuff to get the money for Sykes. The dogs sing yet another typical song about surviving the city, and Tito the stereotype chihuahua takes Oliver to hijack a limo. In it, we see a young girl named Jenny and her butler who finds out that her parents won't make it for her birthday. Oliver, after Tito's mishap with the wires, ends up with Jenny and she takes him home, with the dogs following after him.
I think you may want to clean him up first, kid. He looks dirtier than my fanfiction.
Oliver gets acquainted with his new home and also meets their other pet, a pampered prize-winning poodle named Georgette, who is mildly inconvenienced by Oliver's presence to say the least. Benny then takes Oliver out and about in a sequence of them being the best of friends with yet another run-of-the-mill song about friendship. You just got it, Jenny, I've had a more committed relationship with my cologne! The dogs make it to the house and with help from Georgette, get back Oliver and take him back to their hideout. Oliver is confused and tells him that he liked it back there, leaving his pals feel betrayed. After learning that Jenny is from a rich family, Fagin writes and sends a ransom letter to Jenny to give him the money to pay off his debt so she can get Oliver back. Not only does this feel incredibly random and out of context for his characters, it makes the audience completely change their outlook on the character as a whole, and at that point he deserves to lose everything he owns and love. Jenny and Georgette head out to pay Fagin with her own money to get Oliver back, but Sykes comes in to steal her, with Fagin and Oliver and company following to save her. They sneak in the place, saving Jenny, which leads to a chase climax of the gang against Sykes in his car across the city and subway, before making it to the bridge, with Sykes getting ran over by a train in one of the grimmest fates I've seen in an animated movie, let alone a Disney movie. But Fagin, Jenny, and Oliver and company all make it out okay. Afterwards, Oliver officially becomes Jenny's pet, everybody celebrates her birthday, and Oliver is still in contact with Dodger and his gang. This movie kinda sucked. Though it's not the worst film of the Disney library, the art style looks fine and so is the song lineup, but do I have a bone to pick with the film's story and characters? Oliver, the titular character, serves no purpose in the film's story to stand out other than being a plot device for everyone around him. The dog gang is a complete waste other than Dodger, the literal bitch that wasn't initially part of the crew, and the stereotype chihuahua. You could tell this was done for the sake of merchandising. And lest we forget Fagin, one of the most incompetent role model characters I've ever seen. I once again apologize to any fans of this film, but this one didn't do it for me. Now that should be where the Bronze Age ended, as a year later, The Little Mermaid released in cinemas to vast critical and commercial success, leading to the Disney Renaissance, and to this day is hailed as one of the best of the Disney animated canon. But I'm gonna make the counter-argument and call it the worst film of the animated canon, and going over why here would be redundant as I already ruined this movie a while ago, and long story short, Ariel's a brain-dead moron who teaches a dangerous lesson to the film's primary audience to make drastic changes to yourself to get everything you want without taking the consequences into consideration. The songs are nothing more but sadistic torture devices, every single character sucks, it has less logic than The Room, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and they still thought having an old hag attempt to marry a far younger guy was okay. Also, I think that video may have been the reason as to why the live-action remake bombed in cinemas, so no need to thank me.
But it started off the Renaissance and revived interest in animation. Yeah, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit already kind of beat that film to it a year and a half prior, and I'm also just gonna remind you of what came out afterwards. So screw you, we're still in the Dark Ages!
Why The Rescuers? It wasn't like the first movie was that groundbreaking. Now what was it that I said earlier? The Rescuers was pretty good. I just really hope it doesn't get an unnecessary sequel 13 years later. You have one job, Disney. We start with a boy named Cody heading outside in the Australian wilderness with his animal friends telling him about a trapped mother eagle. He goes out to free her and quickly become friends, even giving the boy a feather and showing him her eggs. As he heads back home, he encounters a poacher named McLeach and his pet lizard Joanna, who kidnaps him wanting to find and poach the eagle, whilst throwing his backpack in a river of alligators to make it look like he got eaten. Some mice ring up the Rescue Aid Society around the world, and it isn't until a good fifth of the movie where we finally see the main characters, Bernard and Bianca, at a restaurant, where we see Bernard trying to propose to Bianca, but struggles to get the confidence to do so.
I think we all know where this is going.
The two get called into action to save the boy in Australia, with Bernard at first thinking that Bianca will marry him. They head off to Albatross Airlines, now under new management with Wilbur, who then take the mice all the way to Australia, even hitchhiking on an airplane for most of the journey. Once they get to the mainland, Wilbur makes a crash landing, breaking his back, and the mice then meet Joey the mouse, who will help them find Cody, whilst wooing Bianca, making Bernard feel jealous because of him wanting to propose to her, all while failing to follow along with them.
I think we all know where this is going.
Whilst Wilbur gets taken care of by mice doctors and the police holding a search mission for Cody, McLeach then takes the boy to his hideout, asking him where he got the feather. To the surprise of nobody, he refuses to talk.
Is the movie forgetting about the Rescuers?
Oh, never mind, as we cut back to the mice with Bernard trying to propose to Bianca again, but backfiring thanks to a snake Jay tames, which everyone rides on. Meanwhile, McLeach throws Cody in a cage with other animals held captive, who help him grab the key, but Joanna and McLeach catch them red-handed, crushing their hopes of escape. Except for a lizard who tries to free himself using his tail to unlock the door. The film then turns into that one scene from Avengers Infinity War, as Wilbur is frightened of the procedure the doctor and nurses are about to give him, and as he attempts to flee, he mends his back and quickly follows the mice. The police finds Cody's backpack and gives it to his mother, telling the hard news that her son is dead, and call off the search. After some hijinks with Joanna eating his eggs, McLeach figures out that Cody's weak spot is the eagle's eggs. The lizard's tail plan to escape works somehow, but McLeach catches Cody and lets him go free, only to follow him to find the eggs with the rescuers tagging along. As Cody makes it to the eagle's nest, everybody shows up with the rescuers finally meeting Cody a good 4/5 of the movie in, as the eagle comes back to her nest, only to be captured by McLeach on the cliff, because of course he does. Joanna tries to eat the eggs, but Bernard cleverly swats them with rocks prior, and Cody gets captured yet again alongside Bianca and Jake, with Bernard failing to catch up. While all hope seems lost for the captive boy, eagle, and mice, Bernard instructs Wilbur to keep the eggs warm as he follows McLeach with help from a warthog taking him to them. We get to the climax as McLeach prepares to kill Cody, feeding into the alligators! But Bernard comes in to help bust the mice out and tips McLeach and Joanna into the river. But Cody soon follows the poacher and Bernard comes in to save him. McLeach fends himself at the alligators! Only to go down a waterfall, meeting his maker. The eagle picks up Bernard and Cody in the nick of time as up in the sky, Bernard finally proposes to Bianca with her saying yes, Jake tipping his hat to Bernard, and back in the nest with Wilbur, the eggs finally hatch. This was a pretty messy sequel. While it does have some great animation, and I did enjoy McLeach and Joanna at some points, the problem was how unfocused it felt. We don't spend enough time with the rescuers the film was named after. It is too much focus on the kid, with the film occasionally forgetting about the eagle he wants to protect. Some side plots with Wilbur's back and Cody's animal friends at the start felt pointless, and the cliche as all hell proposal conflict. Besides, if you ever feel useless, remember that Cody's mother played absolutely no role in the film's outcome whatsoever. Don't get me wrong, I would much rather watch this than the vast majority of the company's straight-to-video sequels. Which isn't saying much. It's not terrible, but is still a pretty confused sequel to one of the Disney movies ever made, on top of serving an omen for one of the company's most notorious trends in the 2000s. which leaves me that more puzzles as to why it's associated with the Renaissance. Did The Little Mermaid really leave that much of an impact for Disney? But one thing to know is that this was the first animated film to be fully produced on a computer with the CAP system, which not only makes the animation look cleaner and helps save money from using cells, but also allows for more easier to implement CGI, and this film does have some pretty cool, if dated shots thanks to it. While the film was nothing to write home about, it at the very least paved the way for how we make animated content today. Yet most importantly, my comment on this film in my Prince and the Pauper review didn't age like milk.
Plus, it's better than the film that initially played after it.
It sure is October 2023, Ed. It sure is.
And that was the Bronze Age of Disney, the first era without Walt's involvement, and in some ways, you could kinda tell. While not nearly the Dark Ages everyone hails it as, with some fairly enjoyable films, I don't see myself going back to this slate as much as the Gold and Silver Ages for the most part, and is not helped by a couple of straight up bad films. It still leagues better than the wartime era, and throughout this one, the output was still consistent, and by the end of this era, at least started to see bits of Disney's former glory after some growing pains without Walt, and now that more talented people are on board the studio, the future I think is starting to look bright for the Disney animated canon. And now that I got those films out of the way, I'll have to review Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and the Lion King next! Now if I had to rank all films covered from worst to best, it would be The Little Mermaid, The Black Cauldron, Oliver and Company, The Rescuers Down Under, The Aristocats, The Rescuers, The Fox and the Hound, Robin Hood, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and The Great Mouse Detective. Have you seen any of these films, and if you did, what you think of them? Let me know down below, and like always, thanks for watching.